I don't have children, different circumstances, but I have 13 nieces and nephews. And I tell them all the time, like, our biggest success, my biggest success, our family's biggest success is that we enjoy being around each other. Like, that is the thing that drives everything that I do or any of us do.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, as always, Yonah Weiss. I am excited to be here today with Bryan Escudero. Welcome to the show. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, man, I'm honored to be here. I've been a huge fan of what you do and how you do it. So I was surprised to be accepted and be invited. So I'm super blessed to be here. Thank you.
No, it's awesome. We've shared a few LinkedIn Live episodes together with through the LinkedIn 10-day CRE Commercial Real Estate Challenge that we do a few times a year. Appreciate you always participating in that. And it's amazing to hear your story. You're someone who, as you mentioned a lot, the name of your company is First Gen, right? Which is talking about first generation investors, for people who come to the United States, First Gen Foundations. It's really about building that foundation. And, that's where first generation investors, they don't have that foundation, right? And I think what you're doing is amazing to help to provide that financial knowledge, that education for people to get into real estate, get into investing, and know that it's not just about, like a lot of people think, just get a job and work as hard as you can, and that's how you build your foundation. No, there's a lot more to that. So I would love to dive into that a little. Before we do so, please give our listeners a little bit more background, who you are, what you do, and how you got involved in real estate.
Yeah, thanks. So my parents came from Colombia 50 some odd years ago. I was born in Cleveland. I know you don't want me to go that far back, but to your point, we were raised to work hard, right? So it was always, hey, you want more money? Work hard, work longer, work more hours, get a better job. And I have a great job, right? So I have a W-2 in media. I'm an executive in a large corporation. And it took me a long route to go to school. So I finished when I was about 41. When I was done, it was like, okay, Lord, what's next? So graduated, hit the holidays, came back, and it was like, I had always been interested in real estate. So it was either going to be real estate or get a master's degree. Like what was the next step? I started listening to some podcasts, some Bigger Pockets, dove headfirst into books, and I started seeing the ability of real estate to really answer that question. Like, how can I make my money work more for me, right? I had done the typical 401k. I thought I was, super smart, because I opened up a Roth IRA. So I was like, man, I'm really investing now. But I didn't know that there was other options because of, my parents, I'm one of five. And the reality for them was keeping us focused, getting good jobs, being good citizens. And so, there was not a lot of time for that financial education. So as real estate became something that moved at a pace that I could really wrap my arms around, I could understand, we started seeing the impact that it could make in our lives. And then we said, hey, this is a thing. Like, people talk about it all the time, but you can be really skeptical of, flash in the pan people. So we said, let's go out there and let's really focus on these people like us that have had some measure of success, but they just don't know what to do with it. And so, we continue to purchase properties. We manage syndication. So we buy apartment complexes, and we're asset managers. We joined GP teams. And so that's really what we've been doing. We raise capital, we're asset managers, and we love educating folks. So our tagline is educate, grow, give, right? We educate the first-gen investor to grow their investments, to give to the people and charities that are important to them.
Love that. Educate, grow, give. I mean, that's amazing. That's it's just succinct, and it wraps up everything that you're about, which is, the growth is an important part. You don't think about that when you're busy with a career. You're busy kind of growing that. And I know a lot of people, especially immigrants, children of immigrants, are given this work ethic, like you got to work into the ground, basically. Right?
Yeah. And I mean, there are very good things about that. Like I am so thankful for that work ethic, because it's not weird for me to work hard or work long hours, right? I think that part of the difficulty for immigrant kids or immigrants is to like take a half step back, right? Like, just, hey, this is not the only way to do it. And so I'm really thankful for the years of, factory work and
Yeah.
probably breaking some child labor laws, but getting stuff done.
It's so true. And you mentioned you work for a media company. Is that still, you're still working full time in that, or have you been able to transition to work more on the real estate?
Yeah, I'm double blessed, right? So I really enjoy the company I work for. I genuinely do. I was talking to someone last night. I get to coach a lot of people in their careers. I manage a team of about 200 people. And so, a big part of that is how to help them move in their trajectory. I do a lot of operations management and strategic management. I manage production operations for the company. And so, large shows, daily shows, and I really enjoy it. Like, I've been with the company for about 24, 25 years. I don't plan on leaving. Like, there would have to be a really compelling case from the real estate side for me to move. And, the reality is I've had some offers to leave the company and go do real estate full time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, we have a saying in the company is we'll grow slower, we'll grow less, but we'll grow right. And so my partner, he's a civil engineer by trade. He works for a large energy company and he enjoys his job also. So there's probably other things that we could do, but thankfully we both have solid jobs. One of the things that it does help us is we don't have to get into like a crazy deal, right? Because our W-2 is like, we're covered with a W-2 and this is just on top. So what does it allow us to do? It allows us to be really picky with what we go into. And also we're not chasing the next deal to put food on our table. It's really like what works best for the investors, what works best with the way we're trying to build in these communities and really understand how we can serve others while we do it.
It gives a total different perspective, obviously, when you have that, that wherewithal where you're taken care of essentially when it comes to you're provided for. So, I mean, investing is almost, you could almost see it as like a hobby, but obviously when you're taking on investors, it's a real job and you have a lot of responsibility when it comes to that. But like you said, you're able to find the right deals. You don't have pressure. A lot of syndicators out there have pressure to do their next deal, right? Because the fees they're getting, et cetera, is what's putting bread on the table for them. Like when you don't have that pressure, you're able to, I think, focus on what's the best deal, objectively speaking. I think that's a huge perspective. But you are still doing syndications, right? You're bringing investors together and you're putting deals together with other GPs and et cetera.
Yeah, I had a call yesterday for, we have a project that's doing great in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And one of the GPs called me. She's awesome. Shout out to Bibi. So she called me. She's like, hey, we have another project coming up. Do you guys want to join? And I said, look, I would love to, but right now we can't because we have another project that we're dealing with. So it's not like we can do 15 projects in a year. We have to be very selective on what we're doing, where we are, who we're working with, because just there's no time, right? There's not enough time. And there's a great book that I've recently read called Eat That Frog. It's about like saying no to things, right? Like how do you really prioritize? And so, there's always a deal to get into. There's always a group to move money into. There's going to always be those things. But I need to really just focus on, bang for my wife, my family, the community. So so you end up learning to say no quite a bit, which is good too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, each property and each investment on its own is its own business. And you can't take on too much. You have to choose the right ones that are going to be good for the entire portfolio. And obviously, if you want to manage things right, you have to make sure that, you're not spreading things too thinly. And especially if you're still, working a full-time job, there's not probably a lot of time that you're able to commit to. I mean, how much time are you actually spending a week in managing the, the real estate business?
Yeah, when we took over our first syndication, I mean, it was a rough one. The first one we took over, I was spending probably an extra 15 hours a week, and that was just because it was kind of disjointed. I was dealing with a large chain restaurant who had a tree coming over the property, and I was about to hit one of our buildings, and all this stuff. So it was about 15 hours a week just on that one. Now maybe a couple hours, a handful of hours a month per, right? And so once you get those systems going, you're working with property management, the rest of the team is doing what they need to do. So we have the syndications, and then we have some smaller properties in our portfolio, single family. We have 6 unit, triplex, a couple duplexes or a few duplexes. So we also do JVs with folks. And, we love the Columbus, Ohio area, Dayton, that area is really strong right now. We also have some properties in Tennessee. And again, there's just not a ton of time that we need to put in because we put in all the hard work at the front end. We, interviewing property managers, making sure that the markets are solid, So I handle the syndications and then my partner does the JVs, and we kind of split it like that.
Oh, that's great. And you're able to kind of divide and conquer, as they say.
Yeah.
Now, Dayton and Columbus, Ohio, I mean, they are, Midwest have great properties, great markets in terms of multifamily, but you're all the way out in Miami, right? How are you able to, I guess it really depends on the good property managers, right? Obviously, you're not, a lot of people think that real estate, you have to be involved. You have to be on site. You have to be really there and travel to the property, every day, every, week or month or whatever it is. Yeah. What is your perspective on that in terms of investing long distance or finding those right markets?
Yeah. David Green wrote a great book called The Long Distance Real Estate Book. And so, or investing in long distance real estate. And so it's just setting up your team, right? Who's your real estate agent? Right. And I met a great, phenomenal real estate agent under your pockets named John Steyer out in the Columbus area. He's become a friend over time. And so, find a great real estate agent. Then what are the bajillion questions you need to ask a property manager? And you interview people, right? You're creating a team for yourself. So it is your job as the CEO of your company to find your real estate agent, your lenders, your property managers, your insurance agent. And so in my corporate life, I built teams. And so that wasn't very foreign to me in that sense. And then also a lot of the work that we do is remote. So, I have a production in Miami or LA or, in Vegas or whatever. And so I can't be 15 places at once. So I've learned to function with people that I don't see day to day. And so I was able to take that experience into this world. And then having a partner for me is huge. I'm big on leveraging other people's skill sets. Right. And so as an investor, I knew that was going to be critical because my family didn't sign up for this, right? So it's not like they need to take the brunt of me, adding a second full-time job to my life. And that wasn't the idea of doing this. And so just being methodical with it, getting that team, understanding how markets work, understanding how real estate works. It's not without its headaches. But the reality is, we've been able to do some cool stuff in a pretty short amount of time. I look at the losses, right? I'm like, oh, we missed that. And then I have my people around me that are like, hey, dummy, you've done all this stuff. Like, be satisfied with that. So, yeah.
It's good to have mentors. It's good to have people who can give you objectivity to know that you're actually doing things. You're actually making moves. And that's important because it does oftentimes get overlooked, especially we're trying to do more. And trying to be as great as we possibly can and miss out opportunities. But keep your head above water, and I think that's the most important part. Have you been able to, through just your job, like reach people who you work with? Or, like, does anyone know that you also invest in real estate as well as your media company?
Yeah, so I'm big on LinkedIn, right? Thanks a large part to what you do, right? The LinkedIn challenge was the first structured environment that I was in where it was like consistency. And the interesting thing was as I was doing those, I didn't know who was looking. I didn't, because people don't always comment, you get a thumbs up or what have you. But then, just kind of walking through the halls, I was like, hey, I really like what you're doing. Hey, I like where you're doing all this stuff. And so I try to keep the things very separate. Like if you looked at my LinkedIn profile, I don't mention the company I work for. It's in my about page, but I don't talk about that there. I actually created a separate LinkedIn profile for that because I want to keep things separate. I don't want my company to feel like I'm taking them hostage, right? They've been good to me. And, God forbid an investment goes wrong. I don't want anyone to be my company to be tied to that, and vice versa, right? My company, First Gen, doesn't have anything to do with my W-2 employee, but oddly enough, that has led into some really exciting, potential partnerships. One that we have spoken about in the past, and we're seeing movement in that to really leverage the name of the company to do some great stuff for the real estate community at large. And so, we're working on that. Hopefully that comes to fruition. But yeah, I haven't been shy about it. I spoke to HR, legal. They went over my contract. The idea was what we're doing is coming from a good space, and the company is not threatened by me leaving because I don't want to leave. And so, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah. I mean, listen, as long as you're able to provide them with what they need from you, and you are, when you're working, you're working, then people do all kinds of things outside of the hours, outside of office hours, So I don't think that should be a contradiction whatsoever. But, I was just curious because a lot of times, especially there are some companies I know of that are very particular in terms of what people post on social media, especially if has to do with another business or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's great that they kind of give you that freedom to do that. And in doing so, right, you have connections who you work with or colleagues or former colleagues or whatever, like, hey, this seems so interesting. and they learn about real estate through you.
Yeah. And, we've been able to help people move into it. And some, not with us, some with us. I mean, it's not our goal. Our first goal is to educate, right? Educate first.
Right.
Whether you come in with us or not, like, happy to jump on calls. I'm happy, and again, that's the wrong way to do it, right? That's the wrong way. Don't give away your knowledge. Don't be an idiot, whatever. But again, genuinely, I have that base covered, and more than that, right? I have my base covered with my job. There's people that are just fearful, and in the first gen investor community, there's just so much fear. I have an investor that's like, man, I have $500,000 sitting in the bank. And why? They came from a communist country that stole all their money. They're like, I grew up in a trailer park and, very successful person. I'm like, man, and it takes time. I mean, multiple meetings, just trying to help them understand, hey, there's risk in every investment, but there are things that you're going to be able to find ways to make your money grow. And so, we got them into their first private note situation. They made some interest and, they were able to fund their daughter's master's degree through that. And so,
that's cool.
So just being creative, and it's just helping people get a little taste of, hey, it doesn't have to be you working an extra 10 hours a week. It can be you're putting your money to work for you. And so, just that thought process. And we've seen a lot of fruit from that.
I mean, that seems like a huge burden. Some people who come from a communist country, for example, like you mentioned, there's a lot of trauma when it comes to that, especially when it comes to finances. It can be very difficult to overcome that. So, I mean, obviously you have a huge, hurdles to overcome in terms of educating people like that. But what are some of the other, I guess, hurdles or misconceptions you find among immigrants who are, just wary, I guess, of real estate or just, don't know? Obviously you're educating people, so people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. So part of it is there's a really big lack of information in their languages, right? So people that speak Spanish or Chinese or, Hindu, whatever culture they're coming from, I have the blessing that, I speak English fluently, I speak Spanish fluently, I can find the information, whatever. There's tons of information in English and it is all in your face. All you have to do is just, go to a Facebook site and it's there. You have bigger pockets. There's a billion podcasts. And so it's all there. There's not a ton of stuff. And, so I'm Hispanic, so I can speak to that a little bit better. There's not a ton of information in the Spanish speaking world. And so part of it is when you find it, can you trust it? In the general market, that stuff has been shaken out, right? Like, the people that are at the top, they're well known. They've been doing it for a while. But in these other communities, you just kind of have people. A thing that broke my heart and really changed, shifted the thought of what we could do for the community was I met with a group of non-English speakers. They wanted to just kind of pick my brain. So we're talking and they were saying, no, we have a group of investors. And they're like, one of the guys in our group paid $90,000 for coaching and he hasn't bought anything. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how does that happen? And then they're like, look, there's just not a lot of information up there. And so people that are very hard workers, they're savers, they're scrappy people. They're able to have $50, $100, $200,000, but some of it's in their mattress. Some of it is in a bank doing nothing. And so my heart was broken for that. But then it was the realization like, hey, that person has no one they can go to. And I'm not saying I'm that person, but they don't have an entity to go to. I've learned so much via Bigger Pockets and I cut my teeth there because just tons of information, tons of people, and it's vetted information. And obviously you have to. Well,
some of it is vetted.
Vet that for yourself. No, I know, but
a lot of it isn't.
They don't just open the doors, but you got to learn things and you have to chew them through and really understand them. Something like that doesn't exist for a lot of these immigrant communities. And so, man, it broke my heart, but it really dialed in my commitment to the first gen community. Like, how do we help people understand real estate? It's a real thing that can be done. It moves at a speed that can be understood, at least by, people like me. There are things that move really fast and I'm like, I don't have time to understand it. And so, Hunter Thompson, he talks about, real estate has been solved and it has. You can tell if a deal is good or bad. Now, if you choose to risk more to get that deal, it's going to give you higher returns. You have,
right.
The risk is there, but the reward can be there, but it has been solved. Like there are metrics that live, there are numbers that are true, so it takes time, effort, and energy and patience to get through that.
Right.
So that information is just not translated. It's just not. And sometimes it is just no one knows where to find it. And so we're trying to just figure out how to help these communities say, hey, it's here. It's in a place. Use it, go do something well with it.
It's very interesting. I never even thought about that. I know we had discussed this briefly when we met in Phoenix a few months back. But to me, it seems, I mean, I speak a couple other languages, but I don't use like the internet or Google or anything except primarily in English. So I haven't really ventured into kind of discovering, what is even out there available. But it seems fascinating to me that it seems like almost like an untapped market where.
Absolutely. It is. And, so as I talk to people now that we are kind of trying to aggregate to this one place, there is information that's out there, and I won't go into the details of the companies, but there are very large companies that, yeah, we've translated 20% of our documents. So there's 20% of amazing documents that are translated, but nobody knows, right? Whether it's in Spanish or Mandarin or whatever, the person that speaks Mandarin doesn't know to go to this company to get that, because that company is not known for that. That company is known for only primarily English content. And so it's part of that. It's just getting the word out there and
Right.
then who rubber stamps and says, hey, this is good info. So again, it's something that if we can get it done, or when we get it done, it's going to be great. And then we'll solve it for one community and then just duplicate it out for others.
That's amazing. I think this really goes to your core principles of education and, growth and giving. It's all in one, really. Doing something like that, that's amazing.
Yeah. We're excited about that. So more to come, hopefully.
More to come. Absolutely. Now, you talked about investing in Columbus and in Tennessee, Texas. Are you primarily focused on the multifamily? I know you have some single families as well, or are there other types of asset classes that you're interested in? I'm always curious to know.
Yeah. So we started out with a small multifamily, and just because, I remember like laughing at the term your learner home, which was silly to me. Like, you buy a house to learn, but the two properties that we have are in Jackson, Tennessee, small city, just decent cash flow, base hits, right? Just get on base. So we have a couple of duplexes there. And then every time I did a deal, I wanted to do something different. So then we went into a large multifamily a commercial multifamily 6-unit in Columbus. Then we bought the one next door. So we have half of a city block. We're trying to take over the rest of the block. Again, we started in 2022, which was when interest rates started shooting up. So it became more difficult to find deals that penciled out in that smaller area. So we were introduced into syndications, and part of it is not being scared by the thing we don't know. And so, we learned about syndications. We understood, how it could benefit an investor through economies of scale. So then we moved into syndications. And so now we are in large multifamily syndications. Deals come in, and it's not gonna, I'm not gonna look at an 8-unit apartment building if it fits where we are already. I mean, I'm not going to make huge strides to get there, but if something falls in our lap and we happen to have an investor or two that wants to get into that, but we primarily focus on large multifamily. And also we are doing now debt funds. So, just helping people invest in debt, which is, again, a little bit less work. There's some stability there. And so we're opening the investor's eyes, right? And saying, hey, this is the way to make money also. And so if it doesn't include a hammer and a nail, I'm all for it, right? Just trying to help people become more passive. So,
right.
So yeah.
That's great. It's important to focus on kind of one thing, one asset class, get good at it, build a portfolio, and then, see where that takes you beyond that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
shiny object syndrome caught me earlier in the year. And I was like, it was great. Like, I was like, this could be cool. And then I was like, stop it. Like, focus on this. And again, it's people around like, hey, why are you looking at laundromats now? I was like, because it could. And then it was like, just focus on what you have. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many potential businesses and even within real estate that are great. Yeah. They're really great, and I've interviewed hundreds of people on this show, and people literally in every single type of asset class imaginable, and each one of them is successful in their own right. Yeah. But you don't find too many people who are extremely successful in multiple asset classes. The exceptions that I've found are people that have kind of mastered one and then incorporate something else. But to do several, kind of simultaneously, especially within the first few years, is really just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. And that's really where understanding business, right? Just on a larger scale. And my partner and I'm like, go. And he pulls the brakes a lot. And so we just meet in the middle, right? And that's why it's good. Like, it's good to have someone that you can bounce your ideas off of. Mm-hmm. I'm not always right. He's not always right. We have a couple of other members on the team, and it's full on the contrarian attitude, like, who's the person, right, whose job is it going to be to tell us this sucks? Because this looks great. And so, you have that vibrant conversation, and, that really helps us stay focused, right? And we have our vision statement, our mission. We're very documented, right? Our mission and our goals. And we go back to them and say, does this fit our mission? Does this fit our goals? Yeah, that has helped us stay focused. And it's me, the crazy one, that will like say, hey guys, what about this thing? And they're like, does it fit the mission? Does it fit the goal? So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, Bryan, I want to transition now to what we call the final four, because the time flies over here and we're winding down. But the first question for you is going to be, what's the worst job that you ever had?
I'll say probably the hardest job. When I was 13, I worked in a factory with my dad, and it was a hard job because, you're a kid, you don't do that stuff. But it was a good job because I got to see, by the time I was 15, I remember seeing a bunch of probably not 40, 50-year-olds at that time looking up, and it was just so hot and just muggy. I learned a lot of amazing things there. But like physically taking a breath and saying out loud, one of my goals is going to be to have soft hands when I grow up. Because I had blistery hands, like leathery hands, just because, working in the factory and stuff like that. So it was a physically hard job. But I think that was just a moment in life that I remember. 15 years old. And so as I grew up in media, being an editor, and I'm not opposed to hard work. I love hard work, but, I grew up on roofs and, doing stuff outside and just really hard labor. And that set the tone for, hey, I don't have to do that thing. And I don't knock it. I still do it every once in a while, but knowing that I don't have to do it is great.
Yeah, definitely an important lesson to learn and focus. Second question, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
I think Who Not How really solidified kind of an idea that I had about delegation. And I thought I was doing it well. I was doing it well in my corporate job. But for first gen, it opened my eyes like, hey, you really have to just push things away, work on the business, not in the business.
Right.
And that's a book that I recommended a lot. Right. I think it's a great book.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely mentioned here on the show many, many times. Who Not How, Dan Sullivan, Ben Hardy. Check it out. We'll put it in the show notes in case you haven't checked it out yet. Third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I would like to learn to play the bass. So I guess maybe in a couple of years, right, when things kind of slow down a little bit, or first gen, I'll pick it up. But I like music. I enjoy music a lot. Part of my career was I was an audio operator for many years. And so I enjoy mixing live music. I do that at our church, but I've always loved the bass.
That's so cool. And very specific, the people.
Yeah. I don't want to be in front, electric guitar. I don't have time for that. Give me the bass. I like to be in the background.
In the background and keeping the beat. Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Fourth and final question. What does success mean to you?
Success means nothing to me if I'm not bringing people along with me. Right. So whatever that means, it has very little to do with money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have children, different circumstances, but I have 13 nieces and nephews. And I tell them all the time, like, our biggest success, my biggest success, our family's biggest success is that we enjoy being around each other. Like, that is the thing that drives everything that I do or any of us do. And I know too many people that have a lot of money that have no success. And so I don't care about any of it. My mother-in-law once asked me, she's like, when this thing was going, she's like, how much more can you do? And I paused for a second and said, if we're helping people, it's never going to be enough. It'll never be enough, right? This is not for me, because of, my wife's health. Like, if I made an extra $20,000 a month, I can't go on a plane to France for 6 months. That's not going to be my life. And I'm happy in my life. I'm very blessed with the family I have, with my marriage. And so I tell the kids, I'm like, the success has nothing to do with money. It's all about who we are, who our family is, and our relationship with the Lord, and what we can do to help the people around us. So that's awesome. In a nutshell. Yeah.
Love that. Love that success definition. Bryan, it's truly been a pleasure. It's always great to speak with you. And I love what you're doing. So much, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Bryan Escudero, at First Gen Foundations on Instagram, and then our website is firstgenfoundations.com. And they can also find us on our newly instituted First Gen Investor Facebook group. So we're trying to get some traction there, so hopefully they can join us and learn more about us there. All
right, well, we'll make sure to put all that in the show notes. Anyone wants to reach out, highly recommend it. Doing great stuff, and you should continue doing great stuff, and wish you a lot of success going forward. Thanks again so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you. And it was my pleasure. Thank you so much. Bye.
Awesome. And to our listeners, thank you guys for joining us all the way to the end. Once again, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? if you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yonah Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.